Good evening. Welcome to show number 78 of In Harmony with Nature. I'm your host, Shalom Mandaville. This is being pre-taped on the 8th of February, 1990. Today, we have a very interesting guest, Bob Semple, who is a biological technician at the Federal Fisheries. And he'll be talking about underwater species close to Paddy's Cove. Now, stay tuned to the underwater photography.
What I decided to show today was some underwater footage of some of our species which we have around the coast of Nova Scotia. The area in which we are diving is a place called Paddy's Head, which is only a few miles from our famous Paddy's Cove. And so what I'll show you is actually a series of dives edited together with some of the most common species to be found. Our waters are full of flora and fauna, our waters are very rich in a variety of species. So if a diver is just to take a short swim off the shore, they can come across a large variety of species. We have a platonic creature here known as the jellyfish, which drifts in the water column. This one's known as the lion's mane. I guess some people would know them if they pick one up on the beach. They have stingers, and they'll give you a mild stinging sensation on your arms or legs if you were to touch them.
How deep is the water here?
Water here, most of the dive will be around 15 to 20 feet, which is quite shallow. Paddy's Head is a very pretty area. It's got sand, large boulders, lots of seaweed, which gives it a diversity of creatures to hide in and to This is a big boulder now, which has believe it or not, this plant-like creature here is actually an animal. It's known as a sea anemone. It opens its tentacles up and feeds in the plankton, which drifts by. Now, the diver here demonstrates what would happen if an enemy would come along and try to attack it. It will fold itself up and look like a little peach there. One of the animals in the foreground is already closed, but you'll show by squeezing it, it withdraws its tentacles and hides.
Fascinating.
These are often out mainly at night, but sometimes during the springtime, when it's rich in plankton, they're open during the daytime, and they're very, very pretty. And blending into the bottom is another really ugly creature. It is known as a sea raven. And they have spines on the top, which would be slightly, I wouldn't call it poisonous, but it would contain a bacteria, which if you were to get stuck with one of the sharp spines, you'd likely get infection. Now you notice he'll swim, and then he'll hide in the kelp. He just completely disappear in the kelp, so sometimes they're hard to see. They don't like to be bothered, so they'll often swim away from a diver.
Is this all during the night?
No, this is all during the daytime. And we have very rich kelp beds, large area of kelp, and many creatures can be found also hidden in the kelp blades.
I don't see any physical pollution there.
It's a very clean area and very good for photographs, actually. And the water is it's very nice. This cute little fish is known as an ocean pout, and you'll see why. He's got great big lips and a big frown. Mm-hmm. And he's, as far as a diver is concerned, relatively harmless because he doesn't have sharp teeth. He's just tiny little rows of cartilage, which you can put your finger in his mouth and he couldn't bite you very hard. They're very shy too, and it takes a little bit of care in approaching them because they swim very fast and much faster than a diver can swim. You can see the big lips there. Some divers nickname them hot lips. he's eyeing us very carefully because he's wondering what we're going to be doing. During the springtime, this was taken in probably May. A lot of the animals come into shallow water, like the ocean pout here and the lumpfish, wolffish. They come in to mate, and probably that's the best time to see such a variety of species that you don't normally see during the rest of the year. It's very eel-like, you notice.
How would it look underwater in the winter?
The seaweed turns dark because lower amounts of light. But the only species you might find some flatfish, and they're very slow because the water is so cold.
Where would the rest of the species go to?
A good question. I presume they go out to deeper water.
Oh, I see.
Lobsters can be found in caves. On another program, I'll show you how we discovered lobsters under ice. Mm-hmm. And some people had thought they go to deeper water when the ice moves in, but we found they hide under rocks and things like that. But for sure the lobsters come in because during the winter in this area there are no lobsters to be found. They come in right around this time.
Where do they go?
I can't rightly answer that. As I say, we've been doing some tagging experiments with lobsters and getting lobster movements, but that's a tough question. This is another sea raven. Sea ravens, similar to the one you saw earlier, like the brown one. This one's a bright yellow. They come bright red. Not as common as the dark brown camouflage, but and they can be handled with care if you don't hurt them. You know, if you grab them by the tail and scare them, they can swim away very fast. But otherwise, they're quite docile.
How long are they?
Oh, probably about a little bit less than a foot.
The colors appear to be very rich.
Mm-hmm. Now this video that we're showing is all taken with natural light. There's no artificial light here. And often underwater, when you get deeper, you lose your bright yellows and reds. So because we're in shallow water, it picks up the bright yellow. But if I was to use artificial light, that fish would be even yellower. It's quite a bright yellow.
How far would you be here from the shore?
Paddy's Head is like a little bay. We're probably no more than 100 yards from the shore most of the time.
So this is something an amateur diver can do?
Oh yes, this is a very popular place for divers actually. On a good weekend you'll see as many as 12 cars there parked along the road. A lot of organizations take new divers out there for their open water training because it's such a nice place. This is a flatfish. I'm just showing this to demonstrate how they swim. Often people see them on the end of hooks and things like that when they catch them on a wharf or something like that. But they are actually a very fast underwater. This is a little, I haven't quite rightly identified as some kind of little polychaete worm. And he was actually just out in the open. Normally they're either burrowed in the sand. I don't know what disturbed him. Maybe he just decided to swim from one rock to another and we caught him in the open. But very dangerous for a tiny little fish like that or I should say a worm like that to be out in the open because another fish could come along and eat it very quickly. He is only about, at the most probably 2 to 3 inches long. Swimming through the kelp bed, and pollock are sometimes can be very nervous, and they tend to be off in the distance. But you usually see them during every dive. what we're coming up to here now is called a skate. It's related to the rays, like the stingrays and manta rays, which they have down in southern waters. And they swim like as if they're flying through the water.
Oh.
They're very common to the sandy areas. This is, you notice during the photography here where we switch from the boulders, kelp area to the sand. So you get quite a really nice variety or mixture of animals. This little fish is known as a lumpfish. They come in the spring to mate. This one here, I'm presuming is the male because he's a brighter red than you're actually seeing on the screen. But they mate. The female lays the eggs, and the male is left to guard the eggs until they hatch, and the female takes off to, I guess, deeper waters. So the man is left with the responsibility at home, like a couple of other species that we have.
So the male does all the work then?
Yep. And he takes his job quite seriously. They're quite aggressive. They'll attack a diver actually and shake him by the leg just to chase him away from the eggs. Now this cute little fish is known as a wolffish. I shouldn't say little. And I would like to recommend that other people who are watching this, if they're divers, not to try this. As we say, try this at home. This is a very powerful fish. It has very powerful jaws. And what we're doing is that we've played with this until we get him used to us, our presence. And they have the ability to take a broomstick and snap it in two. They eat lobsters, crabs, quahogs. If you've ever seen quahogs, how strong the shell is, they can open quahogs with their jaws. You watch what this fellow does to my cameraman here. This was the first time my dive buddy here was a Portuguese biologist. It was the first time he had seen a wolffish, so he was quite taken by this fish. And it's quite an impressive fish, and it is used as a food fish. But when you dive with these animals, you become attached to them. I'd hate to see this one on somebody's plate because we'd spend time with them, and you get to try to understand them and try to understand their behavior and become almost like a pet.
Do you eat them in Nova Scotia?
Yeah, you'll see them at your local food stores. I'm not sure, they may call them Boston finfish.
Yes, I've seen the name.
They're very tasty. They can grow up to probably 5 feet.
That long?
Yeah, the females will be smaller and the males a bit larger. Now you can see he's getting more tame. They don't like to be touched above the eyes. So originally he was reacting, but now he's because the eyes he can see what you're doing. He doesn't want to be touched. Now my photographer friend gives you a view of the teeth. They have big rasping teeth on the outer set, and underneath they have crushing teeth right in the center of the mouth.
Are they known to attack humans?
That's a good question. You hear divers speak with them with great awe, and I have not known anybody that has been bitten by one, or if someone has been bitten by one, then they did something, grabbed him by the tail or something like that. He now is getting very used to you notice, you realize that we're not trying to hurt it, and almost rolls over and lets you rub him, almost like sometimes these fish have cleaner fish to clean parasites off. And almost like he's allowing us, almost without fear, to touch him. But not to be forewarned, as I say, he has very, very powerful teeth, and you have to be careful all the time that you don't to scare him. This is very interesting because we would be able to swim with him, and he has the ability to outswim us at just almost a flip of the tail. But he just slowly swims between the two of us.
How heavy this finfish? Wolffish.
Wolffish? I really don't know. I know he's a good size. He'd be a good couple of meals. This one. Something interesting I would like to say happens here with the photographer. Actually, I was with this Portuguese biologist who's showing him the underwater camera that he's holding there. He was taking some pictures, and I was instructing him in the pictures. Now the camera has a quick release on it, and he accidentally pushes the release here. And this camera, with its $1,500 lens, drops off, and he swims, and there's an electro-oceanic connection there, and it disconnects. So now our $1,500 to $2,000 camera is left sitting on the bottom as we are so taken up by our filming of this fish, and neither of us notice that it's dropped off. As I say, this doesn't happen on every dive. Sometimes you go, you don't see wolffish all the time. So we were really taken up with this fish. So now all my photographer friend is just carrying around his strobe. And since he's not a photographer, he doesn't really notice the difference. He doesn't notice that it's missing.
Are these wolffish native to Nova Scotia?
Oh yes. They're relatively common. As I say, if you go diving May and June, again, as I say, each wolffish has its own temperament too, and you have to be careful. Some are very docile, and some are very aggressive. Again, I've never had one bite me, but I'm not saying that they don't. They certainly have the ability.
Where are they greatly in abundance all around the world? Mainly here?
Mainly here. Probably down the coast, maybe to Maine and New Hampshire. But as I say, in seeing this, I think if there's any other divers, I think they should treat these fish with great care. We tend to, in taking photography, take a few more risks, I guess, because we're taking pictures, but we still have to be careful, that you watch the teeth. This is the point now where we realize I see through my camera lens that his camera is missing. And so we finish the sequence here, and then we have to go search for the camera. You can see how long a period of time. By the time he dropped it, we're probably 100 yards away. And underwater in this desert of sand, it was quite a shocking event to realize this. But we finished the sequence here and let the wolffish swim away. And then we have to go about searching, and as I show here in the sequence, fortunately, we were quite lucky to capture it again. I thought I'd be spending a whole weekend out searching the bottom for this camera, or some lucky diver would come down and say, "Oh, I just found a camera." But the camera there, it's a still camera, and the strobe, as I say, most of the photography you take underwater is with some kind of a fill-in light to add light to the pictures. And it has a light meter on the top of it. So with that in hand, we continue on the dive again. We're in much deeper water here now. We're probably at 35 to 40 feet. We have swam with wolffish out to deeper water. Certain parts of Paddy's head gets down to 60 to 70 feet around the corner. It gets quite steep. But as I say, we normally stay in closer waters. This again is another sea raven. This one's a bright red, but with the depth, its color looks brown. And at deeper depths, say 100 feet, that red color would be almost black. But you should never, I would say you never grab fish by the tail. So you treat them with care, and it can be relaxed. This is, in Paddy's Head, there's local fishermen have their traps out here, and you can see this trap has 2 small lobsters in it. This is during the May fishing season. So what I thought I would show you is one lobster that's too big for the trap. This guy would never get in, but this lobster has a very interesting history. There's 2 two big lobsters basically come back from year to year, and we know of the location. So each spring we go to the same place, and we're able to play with this lobster. He's probably, you ask, about 12 pounds, 10 to 12 pounds. Quite a formidable species. Another thing is that you wouldn't want to get your hands in his claws. You'd probably do quite a bit of damage if he was to grab a hold of you.
How old will this lobster be?
Oh, you're all full of hard questions. This guy's at least 28 years, I think. No, I'm just joking because it's hard to know. The amount of times the lobster molts often depends with water temperature. The size of them could be nutrients and all sorts of reasons dealing with the size. But he would be quite old. They have said, I think in some aquariums they've had lobsters. They've talked about having the lobster being over 100 years old. But they really haven't had any real way of dating age. Now, another thing is I picked this lobster up here just to give you an idea of the size of it. And again, another thing I don't recommend, you notice how he's very docile. I've got my hand underneath him and he's very relaxed. But another, I got to warn a person because they can really bite quite hard. So, and they're usually quite active and they're very fast. So you don't want to get your hands in their claws. So what I had here, I have a little bag of bait fish. I was trying to get some pictures, and when we were finished with the lobster, we gave him a little treat. I got a couple of mackerel in the bag here. For all the trouble he spent with posing for us. I fed him now. He has the mackerel. You notice he has them in his little mandibles or his jaws. And he's using his claws to keep me away now because he doesn't want anybody to get this. And he backs up into his cave. When we played with him, we put him right back in the very same spot that we got him. I'm sure if we left him out in the open, he would gradually come back to his home. But we always figured if we disturbed them, we'd always put them in the same place as we got them. So this is underneath a cave, and I am using natural light, but you can see his little mandibles tearing the fish apart, and his bottom legs holding onto the fish as it goes into his mouth. And he tears off a piece, and then he pushes it into his mouth. And you notice his tentacles coming out and touching my camera lens, just to see where I am. He's just testing. He knows that I'm there, and as I say, his claws are ready to keep me from grabbing that fish back again. They'll often, if you find them in caves and things, they'll come out with their tentacles and feel you, and once they know what you are, if you're not food, they'll go back into their cave. You can see the size of the boulder that he's under here. I backed out to give you an idea of the area. And coming back now to the end of the dive, I thought I would, as we head back to shore among the fucus and the ascophyllums, I thought I'd show you a cute little jellyfish. I always say the first time you see that this is a great big huge jellyfish.
Looks like that.
But inside it, there's a little animal, a little amphipod. It's called a hyperid, and they live in relation with one another. And the diver here will come in to give you an idea of the size of it. So it's smaller than the palm of his hand. So you can see that little animal. It's a little brown spot just at the top of the bell there. So he's pointing at it. And eventually that hyperid will eat the ovaries and eventually destroy the jellyfish. But it lives probably for a month or so within the jellyfish. Then it will hop out of there and go to another jellyfish. So this is basically the marine species that I just thought I'd show you. Now these are the common ones you can find there by going in May or June. And this is the returning to the shore now and to finish up the dive.
If you went off Eastern Passage and places like this, would you find these?
Quite similar, maybe.
Closer to the city?
Yeah, maybe more of a variety, more of a rocky area would have more of a variety of things, like sea anemones and things like that. Actually, close to the city, it's quite rich in sea anemones, which are filter feeders. Quite a bit of nutrients in the water.
Yeah. Don't the higher organisms live off them, like fish and things like that?
Yeah, the species that I showed you are really quite common. There's nothing unusual there. Maybe at another time I'll show you some of her more uncommon ones. Maybe some of her predators.
I see. Now, how about pollution? Can these stand quite a bit of pollution?
Oh, that's a hard one. I dive in an area called Terrence Bay, and it's got a lot of pollution there, just from local things that's thrown over to probably more natural pollution, like fish bodies and guts and things like that, which is, I would consider that natural pollution. And it's quite diverse, the amount of fish that are found there. And a fish called the anglerfish comes in there during the fall months to eat. It's basically a garbage fish. Will eat anything it can get a hold of. So,
maybe you can tell me, there are a lot of people, like local people along St. Margaret's Bay, who object to fish farming. Why is that? I thought this was all part of the natural cycle.
Well, I guess when you have such a concentration of fish in the fish net, the feces, and that would go to the bottom, maybe they're worried about the buildup of bacteria on the bottom. So unless maybe if there's not adequate flushing, something like that, maybe they're scared it might damage other populations of fish. But some fish really thrive on things like that. So you might get an abnormal amount of other types of fish, which it might bring other species in, just to be around the outside of the pens.
I see. Next thing is that people are always complaining near fish plants that they throw, the fish remains out, and they say it's not a good practice. But I thought it will provide fodder for the other fish.
Yeah, that's what
I don't understand that.
That's what I think. As I say, like in Terrence Bay, that's what happens. And as I say, it's quite rich in life. Maybe a little unsightly.
I'm just wondering why people object to that.
Well, as a diver, it's not, or as a photographer, sometimes it's not very pretty. But on the other side of it, as a photographer, I can film some pretty neat species. Most of the species here that I've shown you here, you can find right off the wharf at Terrence Bay, which I would consider very, but it's not chemically polluted. The chemicals can cause great damage.
Next thing is sewage pollution, like raw sewage, or partially treated, like say primary treatment. What are your feelings about their impact on the aquatic habitat in salt water? Because it's different with fresh water and salt water.
It's great for seaweeds. But overall, if you have too much nutrients in that, it can lead to some kind of an overdose, and then you don't get growth. But small nutrients are always, it adds to the species in some places, and you get a concentration. I don't like to see it. I know some wrecks I dive on is out near Herring Cove, and sometimes it's not nice. You have to worry about yourself getting infections and things like this because of the over amount of pollutants in the water.
Does not the water dilute it?
It would the further away from the source, but as I say, where some of the wrecks are probably not very far from the actual source. Yeah.
Well, I thank you very much, Bob, and you have been watching Bob Semple, federal fisheries biologist, and he'll be back later on in a future show. Thank you.